many of you, my Xbox had the dreaded red ring of death when I was in high school. And up until now, I never really knew how to fix it. But now there are a lot of great videos out there and tutorials or Reddit posts that help you to be able to fix your Xbox. So I thought I'd try it out. That code E74 usually means that there is a problem with the GPU. And from the Reddit posts and videos I've seen, it usually needs to be reflowed. And so that was what I'm going to attempt to do here. This is not the best teardown tutorial. I was new to this, and I was sort of following the iFixit tutorial online. They have a nice little layout there on how to do that. I'll post that down below in the description. But it's pretty easy to tear down. There are some few clips that are harder, like this top plate. It'd be much easier if you had a couple other tools, like a plunger. I know that those are very useful. I didn't have one of those. But if I had some other screwdrivers that I could help prop this open while I was trying to get the other clips, and I know this isn't the best footage of that, but it will come off. Just be patient. If you really don't want to break the tabs, be patient with it. Just go slow. If you try to force it, then those tabs will break off pretty easy. So be slow with it, and you can see there, those are 3 tabs holding it together. These side cases, they're a little challenging to get them off. You have these 3 tabs on the front. Once you can get those off and then kind of open up the Xbox, I suggest putting something in there so that they don't close again as you go to try to get the back side off. So as you flip it over, you can see in this side, my Xbox has been open before, and so it kind of popped open a little bit easier, but there are these tabs that you have to stick something skinny through, like a skinny screwdriver. As you can see here, me poking it through, and you can hear it click as you do that. As you poke it through, it will click and kind of opens it up, but it will close again easily. So you need to keep your hand there to try to keep it open and from closing again. So as you can tell, it's a little bit of a struggle, but I finally do get that off, and you can see these tabs right here. That's what's holding it together. There's like 5 or 6 of them, and you just need to gently press those so that they unlock. Here's the power button. Just prop that off. Comes off pretty easy. And then here you can see you have these bigger screws, and I think there's 6 of them. You'll see as I pull these all off. These are the longer screws, and this is, I believe, a T10 head you'll need to use. You'll need 2 different screwdrivers as you do this, the T8 and the T10. You can see these 2.5-inch screws as we pull out here. Then once you flip that over, you can then pull off that top plate, and this will expose the inside of the 360. After this, taking it apart is pretty easy. Each of the components come out relatively easy. And as you pull off the CD drive here, and the hard drive, I just unplugged these from the motherboard themselves. It seemed to be easier that way. I first attempted to pull it off from the actual drive, but it was pretty hard, so I just pulled it from the motherboard. Fan comes out pretty easy. There's just a connector connected in, and then those 2 little clips from the top will pull it out. Then you have your power button here that you just pull that off, and then there's the front plate, and this is the best footage of it, but there's just 3 screws holding on that front little power plate. And I know it's on in these videos because I had to go back, because at first I was trying to push the motherboard out without taking it off, so make sure you do that first. Take that off, those three screws. So the outer ones are the T10, and then the inner ones that are near the X in the middle, those are T8. So you'll need those 2 different screwdriver heads. Once you get all these out, the motherboard should be free. You just need to finesse it a little bit and try to pull one side up. I believe it's the back side. Try to pull that up first, and then it just takes a little convincing, but it will come out. Just be patient with it so you don't break anything. Now, for me, this is one of the hardest parts, was getting these X clamps off. If you just have a strong screwdriver that's small and pointed at the end, the bit I was using from this like cheap tool case thing from Walmart, it was bending it, but I could get it in there and try to pry it open. It's difficult to do. I mean, the clamps are not meant to come off easily. And so you just have to be patient with it. Get the clamp in between the edge of the clamp and the little bracket that's holding it on, and you can prop them right off. And then these coolers will come off. See, so I finally get these off. They prop off and set those to the side. I'm going to clean them later. Next is the cleaning. If anything, I'd recommend, if you have some Goo Gone, I'd put that a little bit on that first to kind of soften this stuff up. It's older. It's been on there for, heck, a long time. So soften that up, and then I use some 99% isopropyl, and that helped kind of scrape it off. So you see I come back over and over again with some Q-tips and a little scraper just to kind of clean it up. And take your time with this. Make sure you get it nice and clean. I sprayed it a few times, sprayed the motherboard down so that as I heat it up, none of that stuff is sticking to it. So at this point, you have these little tabs that are connected to the motherboard, holding the GPU and CPU down. So you just need to heat these up with a blow dryer. Blow dryer doesn't get it hot enough to reflow it, so you don't have to worry about that, but it will heat these tabs up so you can pull these off. And there's another video on YouTube, and I'll link it. He did a great job of this. This is Borderline OCD. I believe he does a lot of great retro videos, but he gave me this tip of if there is something wrong with the GPU and you reflow it, these tabs could help. They'll hold that in place, and so you don't want that to happen. So removing these tabs will help that GPU to settle where it needs to. A little tip with these, don't be afraid to heat it up with a blow dryer. Leave it on there for a couple minutes and kind of focus. What I would do is focus on just one area at a time. So you can see I'm focusing on this bottom area, those bottom 3 tabs. I'm going to heat those up pretty good, and they'll come off so much easier. I was getting really frustrated at the beginning because I thought I held it on there long enough, and I was kind of doing the whole CPU, GPU at the same time. And by the time I would get to the next tab, it was already cooled down. So I just focus on one area at a time, give it a couple minutes with that blow dryer, and then these tabs will just come off so much easier, and you don't have to be frustrated and spend a long time on it like I had to, and kind of learn as I go. So learn from my mistakes. So yeah, like I said, just be patient. Focus on one area at a time, 3 tabs at a time, and then they'll pull off, and you can see these next ones come off a little bit easier as I went and reheated them up. A little bit smoother. But be patient so you don't slip, scratch the motherboard, or hit something, knock off a capacitor or something. So at this point, I bring out my heat gun. The low setting, I think, gets up to around 700 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to want to heat the back of the board, heat the whole thing. And this is 3 or 4 inches away from the board. I just put it on top of a hot plate so I didn't hurt my table underneath it. I'm just going nice and slow and constantly moving around the whole board and heating up the whole board for about 1 minute. That's why I did this. And it'll be hot, but it's not too hot to touch. You kind of see here. So as you flip it around, you're going to start heating the front now and doing the same thing. And just going nice and slow, not really stopping in one area, just heating the whole board for about a minute. So once you get the board heated up, you can now add flux. And so as I apply flux here, I put a little extra on the GPU just to be safe. I got plenty of it. So put some flux on the GPU, CPU, and so that as I now superheat it up, that will help to repair it even better, make the fix a little bit more lasting. It helps with the board heated up to spread the flux as well. My house is a little cold, so the flux was a little more solid. So with the board heated up, it helped it to spread. So now this time I'll go for about 4 minutes with the heat gun about 1.5, 2 inches, maybe at times 1 inch away. And I'm just going to focus on the CPU, GPU area. Constantly moving, not putting any heat over the capacitors, because if you hit one of those at this moment, they could fly right off because it's already hot. So you just want to focus on these 2 chips here. Try not to put heat anywhere else. And really you kind of want to make sure there's no distractions at this point. Really focus in here for 4 minutes. And I'd set a timer. Sometimes it's easy to lose track of time as you're doing this. So once you get that heated, let it cool down for about an hour. And then I did another good clean, try to get some of the excess flux that kind of ran down. Just clean that off, wipe it down. And then at this point, you can start putting this thing back together and hoping for the best. I used some MX4 thermal paste here that I had laying around from some previous computer builds. And so I just used some of this on the GPU and CPU and made sure not to put too much on there. Clamps go on much easier than they came off. They're still a little tricky though, but once you kind of get 2 in, you can use a screwdriver or something small to just kind of pry it back on. Even if your hands, actually I think I found that just using my hands was a little bit easier. A little bit more thermal paste on that GPU, and then put that heatsink back on. So with this one, I just use my hands to click those back on. It seemed to be a little easier. Once you get it lined up, you just kind of use your thumb to press that on, and it clicks on pretty easy there. Don't forget to put your thermal pads back on if you're reusing them, or if you have some new ones. Now it's ready to go back into the case, and you can kind of start placing everything back together. These are the T8 screws that go into the middle where the X's are. You now have the T10 screws that go around the outside and hold the motherboard to the case. There are 9 of those. Just checking to make sure they're all tight. Fan goes in, make sure you clean that up if it's dirty. Some of these, when they're really old systems, are pretty dirty. Mine wasn't too bad. I sprayed that out and cleaned it up with some isopropyl alcohol. Put that power plate back on the front with the 3 screws. A lot of people you'll see can stop and test at this point, and I wasn't too confident in my skills at not ruining something, So I was just going to put it all back together, and if I had to take it apart, then so be it. But I was confident, and if I didn't fix it at this point, I didn't know if I was going to be able to fix it, and so I was just going to put it all back together and throw out a hope and a prayer that it worked. So now you can put your 2.5-inch T10 screws back in here to hold that top plate on. Sorry, this is not the best camera angle. I didn't realize this until after I was done filming that my top-down camera has like a 30-minute timer on video, and I'm sure there's a setting I can do to fix that, but I didn't realize it at the moment, and I didn't really want to go back and refilm it. So you get a little bit of a side view here, but everything just clicks back together the way it came, and then you get it nicely put back together. And here's the moment of truth. So as I plug this in and powered it on, first good news is I started seeing a green flash. I was like, all right. I was pretty excited, and I'm actually really bummed because I wasn't filming the first time I turned it on, and I thought I was. I thought I'd pushed record. And so when it had powered on the first time, it was the old interface, like the really old one before it had updated. And so I had to re-record and me putting a game in and just seeing that it works. But I'm kind of bummed I didn't have the old original interface, and it actually automatically updated. And so pretty sad about that. But as you can tell, it worked. I'm able to put one of my favorite games from back in the day in there, and everything seems to work fine. It's pretty loud. It was a lot louder than I remember it being. But well, I don't care. I care that it works. I got my old gamer tag that I forgot about back in the day, back when I was in high school. And so I'm pretty excited that loaded the game here. I'm excited to get some gameplay into this thing and put some hours in, and I'll put an update video, after 10 hours, 20 hours of gameplay, and kind of let you know how this fix is holding up. I know it's not a super permanent fix. It's the best temporary fix I think someone can do at home with the tools that we have. And so if you're looking to do this, it's a fun project. And it's pretty satisfying to revive something I found in my parents' basement that's been there for years and that I thought was dead forever. So if you like it, give it a try. It's pretty easy. I think you guys can do it.